The sun bled across the sky, drenching the dusty town of Red Hollow in a crimson haze. The sound of boots scraping against dry soil and murmurs of a gathered crowd filled the air like a restless storm. At the center of the square stood a wooden post, weathered and splintered, ropes dangling from its side. And tied to it, her back bare and trembling, stood Evelyn Grant, the woman who had refused to marry the town's wealthiest cattle baron's son. Her eyes were wild, filled not with fear, but with a burning defiance that made even the cruel men watching hesitate for a breath. The sheriff, an old man with a hat too big for his sense of justice, cleared his throat as he read the so-called sentence. Evelyn Grant, by order of Mr. Darius Finch, for dishonoring his proposal and the community's tradition, shall receive 10 lashes for her insolence. His voice cracked under the weight of shame, but he said nothing more. The crowd murmured again, and the men with the whip, a burly ranch hand with dead eyes, stepped forward. Evelyn's knees quivered, but her spirit didn't. She lifted her chin, gazing out at the faces watching, her voice trembling yet strong enough to cut through the stillness. "You'll not break me," she said, voice low but steady. The first lash came down, slicing through the silence, echoing against the buildings like thunder. She gasped but didn't scream. Another lash. The crowd flinched, even as they watched, their guilt blending with fear. By the 5th strike, her body shook uncontrollably, and her voice broke into a whispering prayer. "God help me stand." But help came not from heaven that day, it came from the edge of the crowd, from a man who had been standing there in silence, shadowed by his wide-brimmed hat. His name was Silas Boone, a rancher who spoke little, lived alone, and kept his heart locked behind fences higher than his land's borders. Folks said he'd lost his wife years back, and since then, he'd built walls of solitude, not just around his home but around his soul. He didn't drink, didn't dance, and didn't meddle in town business. But when that whip cracked a 6th time and Evelyn's body sagged forward, something in him snapped. His boots moved before his mind could stop them. Each step echoed like a drumbeat of rebellion. The sheriff's voice stammered, "Boone, don't you dare," but Silas kept walking. The crowd parted like wheat in the wind. When he reached her, the men with the whip froze, his hand trembling as Silas' cold gaze locked onto him. Without saying a word, Silas reached for his hunting knife, cut the ropes binding Evelyn, and caught her before she fell. "This ain't your place, Boone," the sheriff stammered, but Silas turned, his voice gravelly, deep, and slow. "It is now." He lifted Evelyn as though she weighed nothing, her blood marking his shirt like a scar of truth. Without another word, he carried her past the crowd, past the sheriff, past Darius Finch, the men whose pride had ordered the whipping. Darius sneered, his voice sharp and venomous. "You can take her, Boone, but you'll answer for this. She's mine by law." Silas stopped at the edge of the square, turned his head just enough for his voice to reach the crowd. "No man owns a woman," he said quietly, and his words carried more power than a gunshot. Then he walked away, leaving the town in silence, carrying Evelyn into the setting sun. When Evelyn woke, she found herself in a cabin, warm, simple, with the faint scent of cedar smoke and horses. Her back ached like fire, but the sheets beneath her were soft, and her wounds had been cleaned. She turned her head and saw Silas sitting in a chair across the room, staring into the fire. His face was rough, his eyes shadowed, his hands resting on his knees. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "You'll heal fine. Food's on the table." She tried to sit up, wincing, clutching the blanket. Why did you help me?" He didn't answer right away. The only sound was the crackling fire. "Finally," he said, "didn't like what I saw." His words were simple, but there was something in his tone, a quiet storm, a past that spoke in silence. Days passed. Evelyn regained strength, though her heart still carried the weight of humiliation. She tried to leave once, but when she stepped outside, she found Silas fixing the fence near the barn. Town ain't safe for you, he said without looking up. They'll come. I can't hide forever, she said. Then don't, he replied, hammering another nail into the wood. But don't run back to hell either. His bluntness irritated her. But she couldn't deny the truth in his words. That night, as rain began to fall, Evelyn helped him bring in the horses. Despite the pain in her back, Silas said nothing, but when she slipped in the mud, he caught her again, this time. Their eyes met, and for a brief heartbeat, something wordless passed between them. Not pity. Not romance. Understanding. As the days stretched into weeks, Evelyn began to see the men behind the silence. Silas worked from dawn to dusk, never complaining, never asking for thanks. Yet there was gentleness in how he spoke to his horses. How he made sure she had the warmest blanket. How he left fresh flowers, wild daisies, on the windowsill every few mornings. One evening, while she was cooking stew, she asked, "You live alone out here?" He nodded. "Why?" "Because people talk too much. And they hurt more than wolves." She smiled faintly. "That's true." He glanced at her then, a rare thing. "You planning to go back?" Evelyn shook her head. "I'd rather start again in the wild than return to that town." He nodded. Approval flickering in his eyes. "Then you'll stay till you're ready." But peace never lasts long in the West. One morning, they heard horses approaching. Through the window, Evelyn saw Darius Finch and 3 of his hired guns riding toward the cabin. Her breath hitched. "They've come," she whispered. Silas stood, calm as a mountain. "Stay inside," he said, reaching for his rifle. Evelyn grabbed his arm. "They'll kill you." He looked at her, a faint smile at the corner of his lips. Not the first time someone tried. Outside, the men dismounted, dust swirling around them. Darius called out, "Boone. You've got something that belongs to me." Silas stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, eyes steady. "Ain't yours, Finch. Never was. You think you can defy me?" Darius spat. "You're just a washed-up rancher hiding behind a broken woman." Silas didn't flinch. "Say what you will, but cross that fence, and I'll bury you where you stand." The wind howled between them, and for a tense moment, no one moved. Then one of Darius's men drew his gun. The shot never came. Silas fired first, the sound echoing through the hills. The men dropped. The others froze. Darius's face went pale, rage burning through his pride. But he turned his horse around. "This isn't over," he hissed, and they rode off, dust trailing like shadows of defeat. When Silas turned back, Evelyn was standing at the doorway, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You could have died," she said. He shrugged. "So could you. Guess that makes us even." She laughed through her tears. A sound he hadn't heard in years. It filled the cabin like sunlight. That night, they sat together by the fire. She looked at him, her voice soft. "Why do you care so much?" He stared into the flames, his voice a whisper. "Because once I watched someone I love get hurt while I did nothing. Not again." She reached for his hand, and he didn't pull away. Weeks turned into months. Together, they rebuilt his ranch, one fence post at a time. Evelyn found strength in the soil, in the wind. In her new life beside a man who spoke little but meant everything he said. The scars on her back healed, but deeper than that, her spirit began to bloom again. Silas never claimed her, never demanded gratitude or love, but one morning, she found him standing by the corral, looking east. "You ever think of going back?" she asked. He shook his head. "Don't need to. Got everything I want here." She smiled, stepping closer. "Even me." His eyes softened. "Especially you." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Evelyn looked over the ranch, their ranch now, and whispered to herself. Sometimes, the quietest man saves you louder than anyone ever could. And to those watching this story unfold, remember, kindness doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it rides in silence, stands up when others look away, and heals what the world tries to break. If you believe in stories of courage, love, and second chances, subscribe to our channel, because more heart-touching tales like this one are coming. Stay with us, and let's keep believing in the power of humanity together.